Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to IE 206 Engineering Economy class. Today, inshallah, we continue chapter 1 where we stopped last week, and we have stopped here on the equivalence section. The equivalence basically means that the value of the money, how it changed over the time, considering the interest rate applied. For example, here in the slide shows that the 100 real, when you apply 6% per year, after 1 year, it's considered to be 106 worth of value of money. So the 100 real or dollar today, it's equivalent, يعني تعادل 106 1 year later, considering the interest rate 6%. or inflation rate or rate of return. inflation rate اللي هو معدل تضخم سواء للعملة or interest rate for a business loan or rate of return for a business investment. I explained, Hazim, your question, I explained it clearly on the first week on the orientation. So go to the recorded sessions about the difference between the slides here and the slides online. In the example of the AC Delco makes auto batteries available in the General Motors dealers through a privately owned distribution chip. In general, the batteries are stored throughout the year, and a 5% cost increase is added each year to cover the inventory carrying charge for the distribution chip. الصوت واصل؟ طيب. Assume you own the city center. Make the calculation necessary to show which of the following statements are true and which are the false. So he is giving you an example about a batteries company, AC Delco. Maybe it's a well-known, everyone knows it, and they have a 5% interest occur every year for the cost. And he's giving you 3 statements, يعني 3 scenarios or 3 جمل. Considering the given information, is this statement correct or wrong? يعني هو بيسألك في A and B, C, is this statement given, is it correct or wrong? So we start with the first one and we examine it based on the given information. It says the first one, A, in the red font, the amount of $98 now is equivalent to a cost of 105.6 1 year from now. Okay, how we can evaluate if this statement is correct or wrong? We go to the given information that the 5% is applied yearly. Okay, so when it says $98 now, and asking you year from now, that's mean a year later, we have to apply a 5% on the 98, and then we add it to the 98 to see whether that's correct or wrong, if it's going to be equal to 105 or less or greater. Okay, so the 98, when we apply the 5% to it, okay, we get 102.9, and that is not equal to 105 that's given in the statement. So we can say that the 105 is not equivalent to $98 year later, with the consideration of the 5% applied per year. Okay, so let's go to the second statement. A truck battery cost of $200 1 year ago is equivalent to 205 now. These type of statements you can guarantee expected in exam 1 especially. I bring these type of questions and you have just to pay attention. The question is asking about now or in the past or in the future. So you have to be careful in reading the statements. For example, in statement B, the 200 1 year ago and the 205 is now. So the 205 considered to be a future to the 200, okay? So we have to apply the 5% on the 200 and see whether going to be a 205 or no. So if we apply the 5% on the 200, we will get a 195, not 205, which means that the statement also is wrong. Okay? The last statement, a $38 now is equivalent to a 39.9 1 year from now. The last statement is similar to the first one. We have a given value for now and we want to compare it to the future. So we have to apply the 38 also, the 5% to the 38, and then we see if it's going to be equal to 39 or no. If we apply the 38, if we apply the 5% on the 38, we get the 39.9, which is correct. How you apply the 5%? Basically, you have either ways. You either multiply it directly with the 1.05, which is the percentage, plus to 1, or you multiply the percentage, 0.05, I mean the rate, to the original amount, and then you get a value. That value you add it to the original amount again to get the total. Okay, صالح تفضل. You have a question.
يعني يا دكتور اللي بالأحمر هذا السؤال وأنا أكتب اللي بالأزرق يعني بعد 5% وأكتب اللي هي صح ولا خطأ.
Yes, the A, B, and C, those scenarios or statements for the AC Delco company given information that in the text. And then you have to evaluate each one of them whether it's a correct or wrong as it's stated in the blue answer, okay?
تمام.
Okay. The simple and compound interest. This section 105 ثابت depend on the percentage. If the percentage is 5, then it is 105. How you apply 5% on a 100? How you apply 7% on 100? عندك 100 and you have a 7% per year. After 1 year, how much it will be? يا عبد العزيز معانا؟ Okay, so the 5% is the same way. The simple and compound interest, here in this section you will see it in mathematical formulation. This is one of the important sections in chapter 1. There are two important sections in chapter 1. This section, the simple and compound, and there is another one coming later. We will see it inshallah. Why they are important? Not because they are coming only on the exams and all that, because most of what you have in here in the lecture comes in the exam. You see extra material in the additional slides online, That's for your own practice and your own extra reading. Here I focus on the concept and practice the fundamentals. So you can master the fundamentals and the concept of each section and each chapter. And then you can go and practice the remaining additional information. If there is something that I mentioned here that is not included, then is not included in either way when we come to that. But here in chapter 1 there is nothing that is not included. So let's come to the part where is the simple and compound, and what does mean. كيف نوصل للتسجيل. Okay, I will send on the Edmodo. I assume all of you are in the Edmodo. I will send you the link for all the recorded sessions on the Edmodo, so you can watch them later. I was supposing that some of the students here, they already create a group on phone or whatever is, يعني, all of you are together, so they can send you the links. But if those students, they didn't send you the links, I will do that and post it on the Edmodo, okay? But the students from IEA section, they can't send you the links. If you are in one group, the IEA section, you are supposed to يعني, at least help your colleagues if you are in one group and send them the links, because I originate the videos in this section and the others, they are invited to come here because they are parallel sections. But anyway, I will send all the links today inshallah on the Edmodo and keep posting the updates for the links lecture by lecture. طيب, thank you Umar. For the simple and compound interest, as I said, when we use the simple and compound interest, are the importance of this section is not because they come on the exams. Why? I will give you a small example. You see a percentages that applied by banks when you go purchase a car in the leasing option اللي هو نظام التأجيري, or when you go and ask for a loan قرض, they give you a percentage. You don't know percent how it's applied. There are different ways this percent, it could be with the same exact number but give you at the end different total interest. Okay, I can give you 1% or 2% interest rate, but they are applied in a different ways. At the end, you end up paying differently in the total sum of the interest amount if you applied one method compared to the another method. Those two methods are the simple and compound. The simple, we call it the simple interest, اللي هو التعريف يعني الفوكاب حقها الفائدة البسيطة. And the compound اللي هي المركبة. It doesn't say when you see the 3%, you don't know it's a compound or interest or simple. But you have to understand how it's been calculated, so you don't fall in a trap that a small percentage could attract you to go and apply for a loan or purchase a car with a company or a bank, and then you find this percentage is applied differently than what you have learned here in the economy. Okay, so you have to distinguish between these two methods. The first method is exactly as we have applied in the previous sections in the equivalence. When you have the simple interest, the interest only applied on the original amount, or we call it a principal. See the word here, principal, اللي بين قوسين, in the definition. We will use it a lot in this course. The principal معناها original amount or capital or first cost, هذه كلها the same meaning اللي هو المبلغ الأساسي اللي اندفع. Okay? simple interest applied only on the original amount. So every year applied on the original amount. وبعدين ايش يقول لك؟ ignoring معناها ما بينظر on the accrued interest للفوائد المتراكمة أو المجمعة. Why? Because if you have applied for 5 years, the 5%, when we ask the question here to Abdul Aziz or Umar, they said after 1 year it will be 105. So the simple interest on the next year, it should be applied on the 100 or on the 105. You see the difference? This is different methods on applying the same exact percentage, okay? The simple interest applied always on the original amount. So if I have 100, the 100 for the next year, it will be 5 riyal or $5. The second year also will be 5 riyal. The third year will be 5 riyal, and so on. So the interest, and these are the formulas. We go one by one. The interest rate period, which is the principal اللي هو original, multiplied with the interest rate. Interest rate period فترة عفوا interest rate per period الفائدة على فترة القرض ولا فترة اللون اللي هو الكونتراكت. The total interest إجمالي الفوائد. The total interest is very important. Why? Because at the 5-year plan or the year plan, you can tell how much interest you paid, because eventually you will pay the exact amount. If the loan is 100,000 riyal, definitely you will pay it back, the 100,000 riyal. But always the concern about how much interest at the end I'm paying. So the total interest, this gives you the original عفوا the مجموع اللي هو الفوائد. Principal multiplied with the interest rate multiplied with the number of periods, so you get the total interest. And the total amount, which is the original plus the interest, you use the formula that principal, the last one, principal multiplied with the 1 plus interest rate multiplied with the number of periods. Number of periods معناها number of years or number of months when the interest applied. Interest rate, and pay attention to كلمة rate, not interest, percentage, rate. What does it difference between rate and percentage? If I say 5%, is this a rate or percentage?
percentage.
Okay, and what is the rate for 5%?
105.
لا، من فين ال1 هذا؟ 0.05. Yes. Okay, 0.05 is the rate. And rate, you just exclude the 100 from the percentage. There is an example here applying the simple interest on a company that has a loan for $1,000 for 3 years at a percentage of 5% per year, a simple interest. How much money will they repay at the end of the 3 years? These keywords are very important, and you have to carefully understanding the question before you proceed. تفضل يا صالح ايش في؟
دكتور الريت يكون جنبه عملة صح؟
جنبه عملة؟
ايوه.
الريت when you divide you divide what on what؟ انت الريت ايش بتقصد فيه هنا؟ 0.05 this is what؟ دولار over دولار or ريال over ريال.
يعني طب ايش الفرق بينهم؟
You don't have ايش الفرق بينهم؟ percentage ما لها عمر. في يونت للبرسنت
اللي هي نسبة مئوية.
طب هذه unit؟
لا بس يعني أقصد علامة تكون جنبها.
ايوه طيب where is the unit for the percentage? If there is a unit for the percentage then it will be for the rate, but if there is no unit for the percentage, so there is no unit for the
يونت
rate.
زي إيش يعني؟
Unit, you asked. there is a
يعني
dollar.
عملة يعني
The
عملة
unit
مثلا
is
دولار
like dollar.
دولار مثلا زي كذا ولا؟
Okay, dollar, جرام, watt, these are units.
اي فاهمك بس
Okay.
يعني اقصد في
Yes, the
الدرس هذا ما ادري.
percentage is not a unit. It's a representing way for the rate in a 100% format. But the original is the rate, which is the 0.05 that doesn't have here a unit because it's dollar over dollar. The dollar, it's a unit, but usually the dollar used for the amount, not for the rate. Okay.
اوكي فيكون يعني
طيب,
نسبة الزيادة والنقصان يعني.
Yes.
تمام.
The loan here is $1,000, which is, we consider that is the principal. Why is the principal? Because القرض هو ابتدأ ب 1,000. So this is the start cost or the first cost or the principal or the original amount. And then tells you that for 3 years, the number of periods, it's 3 years, that's given already here in the question, and the percentage is 5%, and it is a simple interest. The requirement here in this question specifically says how much money will repay at the end of the 3 years. ما قال at year 1 or year 2, at the end of year 3, and how much money will paid, معناها كله وليس not for only that year. He said at the end of 3 years, يعني the إجمالي, the total, how much it will be paid, including the interest, including the original amount. طيب, how we solve this? You always have the formula next to you, and you go to the total amount when it says the principal is multiplied with the 1 multiplied with the interest rate and number of periods. The number of periods is 3, the interest rate is 0.05, and the principal is 1,000. If you apply to this formula, you get that is a $1,105 as a total. So the $1,000 after 3 years, it was 1,150. If I ask you what is the total interest amount that paid after at the end of the year 3, then it will be subtracting this value from the 1,000 to get the 150. That is the interest amount. Okay. If I ask you a question, what about the total paid at the end of year 2? So you just change the number of period, instead of 3 to 2. Okay. Now we go to the compound interest. The compound interest has a slightly different formula, but really affect the total amount paid at the end, especially when you apply that to a large value or a large principle, and you will see the difference in the example, because the example will solve the exact example that we have just solved for the simple using the compound. And this will show you how it could be tricky for banks to use compound interest, but eventually you see the value or the number that if the percentage is slight small, or maybe comparing two banks, usually banks use the compound, but it could trick you by a small interest rate that attract you, but at the end is not really applied in a simple way. It's applied in a compound way. The compound interest in the definition is using the original amount plus the accrued interest. Okay, So the accrued interest اللي هو الفوائد اللي بتطلع معايا كل سنة, it's considered. معناها أنا when the first year I have 105 from the original that 100, the 105 used for the following year to apply the interest. You see, it is different when you apply the interest on 100 compared to 105 and so on. Okay. طيب, the formulation for the compound, the interest per period, الفائدة للفترة, principal plus all accrued interest multiplied with the interest rate. the principal original, all accrued interest معناها كل الفوائد المحصلة multiplied with the interest rate اللي هو المعدل. total interest مجموع الفوائد, principal multiplied with 1 plus interest rate to the power n periods اللي هو number of years or number of months minus the principal. The total due here means the total including the interest and the principal اللي هو original plus the interest. So the total due in red here, the last formula, is the principal multiplied with the 1 plus the interest rate to the power n periods. طيب, let's see an example. The 1000 from the same exact example from the last in the simple that we have used it in the simple. Again, 3 years at the end, he wants you to see what is the total paid. Okay, see now the difference. When you apply the formula, the principal is the 1000, the interest rate is 0.05, but to the power n period, which is to the power 3, gives you 1157, where it was 1150. Okay, this is for a 1000, and the difference between them, it was 7. What about if it was 100,000? What about if it was 1 million riyal? The loans for the real estate والعقار usually is not less than يعني 500,000 up to maybe 2 million, 3 million, depend on your salary, can goes. So that really it matters. This fraction, you see it here in the 1000, it will be thousands on that time. Okay, so there is a difference. You see it 5% here and 5% there, but at the end you are paying much here compared to that one. So you have to know that there are different ways how you apply the interest, even though they are exactly with the same value, 5%, and it's also per year. But this applied using compound, and that one applied using the simple. Okay? Here, more of examples. I can leave it to you with the extra, the one you have online, to practice on them. The demonstration here, it's different than when you open the PowerPoint or the PDF file. You will not see it as it is يعني scrambled here because of the presentation of the Blackboard. So you have to use these examples and practice them to master this concept of the simple and compound, and see how you can have solved the example without looking to the answer. Go and solve the problem and then check with the answers that given to you in the slide. This is the second important part in this chapter. I want you to print this slide or start this slide or whatever that helps you to have these terminologies to be memorized. Yeah, I know that I said you don't memorize here definitions, but you need to know and distinguish these letters because we will use them along this semester. So it cannot be يعني even if you didn't memorize them, you will have to do that by the sooner exam you will have, exam 1, you will use them until the end of the semester. So imagine if I'm going to use those letters often and often, and I don't know what they are meaning, يعني eventually either I'm going to solve all my exams or problems are wrong, or I have to memorize them anyway, or not memorizing, I getting used to them, أتعود عليهم لدرجة إن أنا أكون عارفهم. They are very simple. يعني you don't have to memorize the definition, you just have to distinguish what they mean. It doesn't have to be word by word, okay? The T, usually we use it as engineers for time, so it is easy. And time in the economy doesn't have to be يعني years only, it can be months and weeks or days also. P is the present. Now it is like English grammar, okay? P is the present, is meaning that at time 0, okay? And it compare also, we will come to that when we come and finish all the terminologies. F means the future, and A means the, we call it annual, but it is a series of equal end of period cash flows. What does that mean? يعني قيمة مكررة في فترات ثابتة. This is the simplest way to explain it. Repeated exact value in a certain period or certain exact period. This period, it could be years, it could be every 2 years, or it could be every 6 months. We consider that with the same terminology. A, we refer it as an annual, but annual sometimes misleading because annual gets يعني to the yearly format more than weekly or monthly or semi-annual. Semi-annual means every 6 months, اللي هو كل نصف سنة. N is the number of period, I is the interest. Now let's go back to the P and F. P and F, when we talk about the P and F, always the confusion come because the T is time and all the remaining are يعني individuals by themselves, but the present and the future. When we go back to that example of the equivalence, خلينا أخلص الexample يا أحمد ونكمل. This example, when it says the $100 today or now, and then it says the 106 year from now. The 100 considered to be a P, and the 106 considered to be a future. Okay? Now, imagine if we have year number 2. Okay? Year number 2 will be, if it's a simple, will be 106 on year number 2. Okay? Year number 2 considered to be future to year number 1, and year number 1 considered to be present to year number 2. Clear? So if I have, we call this a cash flow, we will explain it here today inshallah. But if we have year 0, year 0 معناه at the beginning, at the right moment where the investment start, on the time when you sign the contract. هذه now, year 0 or time 0. Year later, it can be 2 years or 3 years. Year 1 consider a future to the present of year 0. Year 2 consider to be future to the present of year 1. Also year 2 consider to be future to the present of year 0. فمعناها any year comes previous to the value that considered to be present, and any year falls after the given value considered to be a future. Okay? Now Ahmed, your question. تفضل.
الله يديك الصحة والعافية يا دكتور. دحين أنا استوعبت تمام الفيوتشر والبريزنت، بس اللي شرحته بالنسبة للإيه ما استوعبتها مزبوط، فممكن تعيدها إذا تكرمت؟
طيب ال A, we will come to the annual. خلينا مع ال present كمان. When we come to the cash flow, hopefully it's now. Okay, now here is examples. خلينا, if we finish the examples and finish this chapter and you still don't know what is the annual, all to the all students, not only Ahmed, I will explain it again, but I usually find the examples better than يعني, the explanation. This is an example, giving you given information and given numbers, and at the end ask you to find the symbols اللي هو terminology for each value that given in this example. خلينا نقرا example. A new college graduate has a job ان شاء الله زيكم كده with a Boeing ان شاء الله تاخذوا مع Boeing تشتغلوا aerospace. She okay طيب انتم حتكونوا هي plans to borrow $10,000 now to help in buying a car. يعني typical example, just graduated an engineer and so wants to find يعني to borrow 10,000 عشان تشتري سيارة. She has arranged to repay the entire principal plus 8% per year interest after 5 years. I engineering economy symbols involved and their values for the total owed after 5 years. Now, some students will say, okay, where is the simple and compound? Okay, the simple and compound only appear in the questions for chapter 1. الصوت يقطع ولا بس عند عبد الله؟ طيب شوف الصوت. طيب هو الصوت إذا if it's working with others فاللي يكون عنده يقطع if you see it in the recorded session معناها إن شاء الله الأمور حتكون تمام. Okay. Maybe students now will ask, okay, طب where is the simple and compound? يعني beside to the terminology now it's asking when we have to solve simple and compound. Don't confuse yourself. The simple and compound will come in a certain and specific question. Ask you to find the total using a simple or the total using compound. At the remaining after chapter 1, we are not going to deal with the simple and compound. We are going to deal with the tables that convert those interests to a value. So you don't have to do any conversion using mathematical I mean, you don't have to consider the simple and compound in the future, only in chapter 1. So the questions will come specifically in chapter 1 to calculate simple, and it's stated clearly in the question it's simple, or it's stated clearly it's a compound. But from the chapters coming in the future, you will not deal with the simple and compound, you will deal with something else that calls tables, will save your time and effort. Okay. Why we are not using the tables now, maybe يعني some of the questions that come, because the tables only use the compound and it's the most common used concept. So we are showing you that there are different between the percentages, how they are applied, it's simple or compound. That's why in chapter 1 we show you that. But in the coming chapters 2 and the remaining chapters, you are not going to deal even with the method of either one of them. So you are going to use tables that will save your time. Okay. Now going back to this example, when it says to borrow 10,000 now, if it says now, that's mean this $10,000 is for the present, it's for now, and the 8% is the I, which is the interest rate, and the 5 years is the number of years, which is n, and the missing information here, or the needed to be found, which is the total value after 5 years, which is future. معناها حاجة in the future after 5 years. Okay, let's see an example. Another one. In July 2002, a company, Ford company, deposit أودعت. خلينا نخلص كل الexamples ونجيب لأنه some questions may be appeared and I'm going to answer them. If I finish, I will give enough time. We are good in time. and inshallah we will finish chapter 1 and we will have enough time to discuss all questions. Okay, I'm not going to leave this class without answering your questions, but maybe your question coming now or in the coming slides. So يعني if you just hold it and write it down so you don't forget it. Okay, now the company deposit أودعت 5,000 in the market account as a part of employment bonus. Regardless why they did that, they deposited 5,000. ادخروا أو استثمروا. The account pays interest at 5% per year. You expect to withdraw an equal annual amount of the following 10 years. Identify the symbols. ايش الكلام هذا اللي بيقول؟ طيب they deposit، خلينا واحدة واحدة. they deposit معناها أودع. How much? 5,000. When it says deposit, didn't say that it's deposit going to deposit in the future. It said already now depositing. So the deposit now 5,000 considered to be the present time. Then the I definitely يعني ما لها أي شيء ثاني. Number of years, how we find it? It says 10 years already here in the example. Now البارت was يعني اللي هو questioning part. You expect to withdraw تسحب يعني كأنها عوائد سنوية with equal amount، معناها عوائد سنوية ثابتة with equal amount for 10 years. This is the annual where it's need to be يعني calculated. طبعا here you don't have to calculate anything because this part is just to identify, is not to calculate. In the coming chapters, inshallah, we will know how to calculate the annual or we calculate the present, but here you don't have to calculate any of those. You have to identify them only. بعدين we will learn how to calculate them. An annual here, imagine that you have a loan. طيب خلينا ابسطنا اللون اسهل منه. يعني when you go and buy this اللي هو الليسنج اللي هو النظام التأجيري you pay installments صح؟ الانستولمنتس اللي هي الدفعات هذه ما هي ثابتة. how much؟ خلينا نقول 1000 ريال الدفعة حقت كل شهر. طيب this is exactly annual. طيب حتقول لي هو every month not every year. طيب اقول لك يا حبيبي انا قايل لك انا ما هو every year. Go to the definition. A series of equal end of period. طيب البيريود هذه it could be year, it could be month, it could be every quarter ايش يعني؟ ربع سنة، يعني كل 3 شهور. السنة فيها 12 على 4 تصير 3. or every semi annual كل 6 أشهر. قال لك end of period. It could be monthly, it could be yearly. فمعناها the 1,000 that you will pay it for the leasing or rental cars, هذا it's a exactly example of the annual. Here the annual was coming in a form of return or عوائد أرباح، لأنه they invest 5,000 and then they will withdraw يسحبوا هذه العوائد سنويا. They want to know for the 10 years how much it will be considering the interest 5%. طيب we come to يعني to summarize 3 lines here. Okay, at the end MARR, minimum attractive rate of return. Forget about all what is written here. Listen to what I'm going to explain, and this is all what you need for this slide. Minimum attractive rate of return. You can go and translate it if your English يعني couldn't help you to understand what is the meaning. Copy it and go and put it in the translation. And when you see the meaning, you will understand half of what does that mean. If you are going to يعني promote your business for investor عشان يشاركك يعني برأس مال كبير مثلا أو شيء, always you need to know what is the minimum attractive rate of return as an investor, اللي هو معدل العوائد الأقل اللي يجذب الانفستر هذا عشان أو هو أقل معدل عوائد ممكن يحصله من البزنس حقك هذا. فكم معدل العوائد؟ والله 5%. يعني أنا if I invest 1 million in your business، معدل العوائد حقك بيطلع مثلا 5%. What is the minimum it could be acceptable to the investor? That we call it the minimum attractive rate of return. It is at the end, عشان to don't get confused, it is rate of return. It is interest rate. ما هو اختراع جديد. احنا كده نحب نسمي اسماء جديده، يعني بس عندنا محمد وخالد وهذا، حنسميكم نفسكم؟ لا، حنسميكم باسماء مختلفه. Each one represent a different form. The rate of return العوائد اللي فقط بتيجي من الانفستمنت. Interest rate للون اللي هو بتاخده كقرض. Minimum attractive rate of return هذا بيكون in the term when the investor want to make a decision about how much I will pay compared to what is the percent of my يعني that acceptable to me. So it is a rate of return but is at the minimum. So if you go less, he will say no, sorry, I cannot go and invest in your business. If the rate of return compared to the minimum attractive rate of return, the rate of return, it could be 5%, let's say, and the investor is acceptable for him 5%, also 4.5 is acceptable for him, but 4 is the least he can go with. So we say 4 is the minimum attractive rate of return. And 4.5 and 4 and 5 they are rate of return but they are not the minimum. Okay, هذا يعني explanation, and you are not going to use it unless and there is a question that يعني to what does mean the minimum attractive rate of return, or to tick whether it's a correct or multiple choice question. Okay, so يعني don't overthink about it. Cash flow هذا always it's a diagram. We show it in a diagram. يعني it will be requested from you in one of the exams to draw a cash flow. I will just show you here. This is a cash flow. Okay, it's a straight line, straight horizontal line that representing the time. This is another cash flow. Okay, the elements of the cash flow, we have arrows. As you can see here in the slides, there is arrows goes to the up and arrows goes to down. The arrows goes to up, that's mean it's a revenue. The arrows goes to down, that's mean it's what? Cost. Cost يعني خسائر أو مبالغ مصروفات. Okay, the arrows goes to up, revenue أو أرباح. تمام. Cash inflow, cash outflow. Cash inflow هو الارrows that goes to up, and cash outflows هو الarrows goes to down. And usually we refer to the revenue with a plus sign, and we refer to the outflow with a minus sign. The net cash flow basically the inflow minus the outflow، فبيعطينا صافي الأرباح أو صافي الكاش فلو whether it's أرباح أو خسائر. A funds flow, okay, end of the period, we don't have to worry about that. Here, this is a cash flow starting from 0 to n. N had it could be 10, 20, 100, whatever. If the arrows go to up, that's mean a value for inflow أرباح at that certain time. يعني معناها هنا arrows this goes to up here at year 2, there is أرباح in year 2, and there is loss or cost and year 0. More example here. P present 10,000 borrowed at 8% per year, and F is sought after يعني تم دفعها after 5 years. Construct the cash flow. This is similar example of how you could have in the questions. You draw a straight line and you identify where is the starting point, which is 0, and the present, which is the 10,000, borrowed. And why it's to the up? Because انت استلفت. The money goes to whom? To you. And the question is about you. So it is inflow لأنه الفلوس معك أنت, not to the company, not to the bank. It's about you. So you are the one having that 10,000. So it's inflow. So the arrow goes to up and you write $10,000. Then it will be paid at the end or after 5 years. So at year 5, it will be arrows to down. You will pay it. So when you pay it, خسائر أو مبالغ حتدفعها حتكون arrows to down and it's outflow. Outflow معناها خسائر. Inflow معناها أرباح. And it will be in a future format because it's on the future. Considering the interest is 8%. Yeah, it could be, but here is not asking about to calculate it, it's to construct the cash flow. معناها ترسم الكاش flow. Another example of the cash flow, I will give you that example to practice it without looking to this cash flow. Read this statement and try to construct the cash flow here. And there is يعني the part that I will explain it only here, where is the 4,000, because it's annual. What does it mean annual? It is exact amount going to be withdrawn حتسحب يعني for how many years? From the year 3 to year 7. فمعناه أحط exact arrows. okay, أحطهم بنفس الطول وأكتب عليهم A equal 4,000. That's mean those arrows from 3 to 7 has the exact amount, which is the 4,000 and represented by annual. Okay, if it was paid off خسائر حتكون للأسفل. إذا كانت لسنتين فقط حتكون 2 arrows exact length and you write annual just on top of يعني in the middle of them. يعني خلاص تكون واضحة for those exact amounts. Some people they put a line here, straight line to connect all those يعني الارو tips يعني عشان تبقى كلها متصلة مع بعض. You can do that عشان توضح انها هي كلها exact the same amount. طيب now we go to the questions and then come back. طيب
دكتور،
نبدأ بصالح، تفضل.
يعني دحين هذه الاي اللي هي $4,000 هي للخمس اسهم كلها، مو بس لسهم رقم 5، صح؟
لا هو okay, we read the question. A father wants to deposit unknown amount. يدخر مبلغ مو عارف كم. For opportunity 2 years from now that large enough to withdraw 4,000 per year for a state university tuition for 5 years starting 3 years from now if the rate of return is 15.5%. طيب هذا father عنده son going to university and he is going to pay for that university after 3 years. He wants to know how much he should invest in the bank or in the investment 2 years from now عشان بعد في السنة الثالثة حتطلع له أرباح. He can pay the school fees which is 4,000 every year. For how long? For 5 years. Like you are an engineering student. You stay for 5 years in the university. And he wants to pay the school fees which is the 4,000 per year. Okay? But he wants to know how much he has to invest a year before that 3 years, about a year before year number 3, لأنه year number 3 he will start to pay the school fees. So he wants to know how much he has to invest. كم لازم يدخر أو يستثمر بمعدل فوائد 15.5. يعني معدل الفائدة يكون 15.5. Bank offers him that we have investment with a 15.5. Okay, So how much should I invest in that offer? In a way, on the following year, I will get 4,000 yearly for 5 years على مدة الدراسة حقت ابني. تمام؟ فمعناه what is the missing information here, or what is the missing, how much he will invest in the bank on year 2, لأنه هو he's not going to pay it now or pay it on the next year, he will pay it 2 years from now. يعني ولده خلينا نقول هو الآن سنة أولى ثانوي. Okay, and planning for his university, which يعني almost 2 years from now, and the third year he will start to pay the university. فمعناه على وقت تخرجه حيكون the school fees معه. فهو he wants to prepare from now, but he will start the investment on year 2, just a year ahead before school start. So the investment will return with exact 4,000. الادخار هذا والاستثمار هيديله عوائد $4,000 كل سنة exactly for 5 years, starting, in the question says starting 3 years from now. Now means 0, 1, 2, 3. So you start from year 3. Okay, حازم تفضل. ما أسمعك يا حازم. حازم, you are raising your hand. طيب, can you hear حازم؟ أنا ماني سامع. هو تسمعوه أنتوا؟ علي تفضل. طيب علي.
السلام عليكم. Doctor, I have
تفضل.
I have 2 types of chapter 1. There is chapter 1 have 47 page, and this 25. Which type of this take?
I explained that for 3 times يا علي. In the orientation day, which is the first week, and I just mentioned it today يعني slightly, and now I'm going to explain it for the 3rd time. The slides here is to explain the concept and practicing some of the examples. The main reference for you is the textbook. In 1 hour, chapter 1, it will never be finished in maybe 1 or 2 weeks to explain it as explicitly as in the textbook. Your job to understand here the main concept and see the main examples, how it's been solved. And you go in the further slides and in the textbook, you practice further examples and you read more about the exact material. About the techniques that I exclude them from the slides here, I mentioned them. Okay, when we come to that chapters 2 and chapter 5 and so on, I will say you will find some techniques 1, 2, 3 in the other slides. You can read them, but I don't bring questions for them. But it's part of this chapter. So it is part of your reading. It is part of your understanding. It is different than the things I bring in the exams than the things required from you to read and understand. Is not just focusing on what is giving me the A, and at the end I didn't read enough material to be an engineering student representing a bachelor degree. You are not in a high school. I'm not giving you a ملزمة تروح تذاكر منها وجيب لك نفسها في الاختبار. اوكي؟ تفضل صالح.
دكتور معلش، في اشياء مواضيع مو امثله. انت الامثله صح انه نروح يعني كتاب ولا شبات الثانيه يعني امثله اكثر نستفيد منها اكثر، بس في يعني مواضيع مين موجود في الشابتر اللي شرحته هنا؟ هذا ايش وضعها يكون؟
Yes, this is exactly that what I just said. You read them for your own understanding, for your own expanding about the engineering economy.
اوكي حلو. يعني هي
bring the type of the yes questions اللي I bring them on the things I focus on them in the class. But to understand the concept of engineering economy, يعني I will give you one example. There is a chapter here called costing. You see them in the syllabus. It's chapter 15. Okay. It depends on the version of the textbook. Sometimes they change the chapter number. This chapter, go and look to KFUPM, King Fahd Petroleum, and see the industrial engineering or any engineering programs under the College of Engineering. You will see a whole course under the name of costing. A whole course. We take it here as a chapter. This is, now it's a bachelor degree, it's an engineering, it's a science. You cannot cover all the material in 1 hour meeting. Your brain will burn out to see the amount of information that I will cover it here. So I focus on the things I bring in the assessment, but doesn't mean that you don't go and read for your own and understand the topic as it's in the further slides online and as it's in the textbook. For the question about the textbook, there are different versions about this textbook. One of those versions I provided to you on the Edmodo, so you can download it chapter by chapter. But there are many editions, نسخ بعد النسخة السادسة online. You can find them with the same author's name اللي هو ليلاند والمؤلف اللي معاه with the same exact textbook name. You will see version 8, 9, 10 and so on. You find them on Amazon used with a good and reasonable, very reasonable price. يعني ممكن 100 150 بعضها تجي تصلها مستعملة تستفيد منها, especially if you are industrial engineering students. I recommend you to have it يعني for your own future if you are going to plan or planning for feasibility study course, or even in the I believe there is a course where is the you can use it operation control, but not much as in the feasibility. So you can find further textbook edition online on Amazon, and the one that I provided on the Edmodo that you can go and download chapters. طيب questions؟
آخر سؤال عندي بس.
ايه تفضل.
ايش الفرق في الرموز؟ ايش الفرق بين التي والان؟
T and N. Okay, good question. Yes, T and N. Let's go to the terminologies. Here it's mentioning to the number of period 532. The T is the type of the period. Is it year or month or week? Okay. اللي كان بيسألنا على اليونت ما أعرف مين هو. So the T is the unit of the time. أنت برضو طيب. And N is the number of that unit. Okay. طيب.
تمام يعطيك العافية.
أسئلة. كان في حازم. if you couldn't open the mic, type me your question. If that your question النسبة إضافة بس للسؤال. يعني ما نشتغل. Is this your question, the one you wanted to ask? Or you have another question? Example 1.17. طيب 117 فين 117؟ Okay, Rayan, here again, here is not requested from you to calculate the present. here ask you, read the question, construct the cash flow, and pay attention in the exam what is the requirement. Because you could spend time calculating the present as you did now, which is good, and I appreciate, and this is means that you understand. Lakin, if the question asks you to construct the cash flow and didn't ask you to determine what is the P, so don't spend time, because that time you will need it for other questions. Read the question carefully, always, okay? In the question here only asks to construct the cash flow diagram. Abdul Samad? عبد الصمد تفضل. عبد الصمد تسمعوه ولا أنا بس اللي ما أسمع؟
ما حد يسمع يا دكتور.
طيب عبد الصمد, if you couldn't open the mic, type the question on the text, the chat box, and I will read it. طيب, أي questions? You see some questions maybe it's يعني being answered in the slides when we continued. Don't always write your question, because sometimes I answer it in the coming slides. علي تفضل.
السلام عليكم دكتور.
علي خيمي.
دكتور هو في السؤال
تفضل.
يعني ذكر لنا انه الاب يبغى يستثمر لمده 3 سنين، بس انه في الكاش فلو دحين في الرسمه اللي باينه عندنا انه بس جات اللي هي كانه مثلا دفع في اخر سنه اللي هي السنه الثانيه، والسنه الاولى اللي دحين 0 و1 ما دفع شيء. فما ندري هو بس يعتبر انه دفع في اخر سنه اللي قبل ما يدخل الطالب الجامعه، او انه دفع من
the
البدايه
question ask you. طيب وضحت. The question says the amount into an investment opportunity 2 years from now. When it says opportunity for investment 2 years from now, معناها متى حيدخر؟ حيدخر بعد سنتين. So at year 2 he will do the investment. But when the return will come, it says here on the third line, for the university tuition fee for 5 years لمدة 5 سنوات starting 3 years from now. طيب تعد الين year 3 معناها دي السنة اللي حيبدأ فيها العوائد لمدة 5 سنوات. So the question says the opportunity will start 2 years from now, so at year 2, and the return of that investment will start on year 3 for 5 years. فمعناها صحيحة زي ما هي معطى.
ايوه يعني اول سنتين بس تكون يعني كانه بيفكر لسه ما اتخذ القرار.
Yes, زي ما قلت لكم, imagine that he is still in high school, first or second, يعني and he has to plan from now, just a year before he graduate his son, so he do the investment.
شكرا يعطيك العافية.
تفضل. أسئلة ثانية؟ No questions? طيب, if there is no more questions, then inshallah we close chapter 1 here for today, and I'm not going to start chapter 2, يعني, so you can digest chapter 1, and only a few minutes left on the class, and inshallah on next Wednesday we will start with chapter 2. My recommendation for you, please download the material, read the material online, follow the lectures, follow where I'm emphasizing and saying this is important, and this I bring it in the exams. You will see that a lot in the coming slides, in the coming classes, I mean. Take notes, and always also read before we start the class. That will help us all to يعني move forward and practice more, because as fast we can finish this course, as I spare sometimes for tutorials and solving problems. But if we spend much time on just explaining the concept, which I don't mind in both ways, by the way, it's just for your own benefit. When we have extra time at the end, before the final, we have some يعني, tutorials. Usually the tutorials, I do it in this way. I assign groups or students that they want to volunteer to solve problems. I giving them the problems, and then they present it to the other colleagues. I see question that was coming from Abdul Samad, but I don't know where it disappeared. Okay, I believe it's on the private. طيب بين النسبة والمعدل، الفرق بين النسبة والمعدل إنها ثابتة. Now this is a question or a statement يا عبد الصمد. Different between the rate and the percentage. Both they are the same. It is a representation. 5% per year. This is a يعني representation to the 0.05 that applied every year. يعني as basic as that. يعني how you apply 5% per year, you have to convert it to 0.05 because that the one you use. The 5% is just a way of representation. Okay. Clear. Okay, yeah, it's the same. This is in the compound. Okay, and Samad, now are you asking or you are restating the information just to make sure that is this the question or? Yes, everyone can leave. We finished the class. If no more questions, we can leave to now. And inshallah, we resume on the next Wednesday with the chapter 2. Good luck, everyone, and see you inshallah Wednesday.